in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Kui Danhua was a female physician hailing from the countryside. I endured the bumpy ride on a donkey cart all the way to the capital with only one goal in mind: to break my engagement with the young Marquis of the Wei family, Wei Changyuan. Little did I expect that the moment my foot touched the threshold of the Marquis' manor, before I could even open my mouth, I would be forced to draw my silver needles and save the life of the old madam, who stood at death's door. My perfect plan collapsed. With no other choice, I was kept in the manor under the dual role of nominal fiancé and resident physician. In the days that followed, while I bided my time and waited for the right moment to dissolve the betrothal, I accidentally overheard a rumor that shook me to the core. The young Marquis, celebrated by all for his valor on the battlefield, had apparently sustained a hidden injury that left him unable to fulfill his marital duties. Driven by a healer's compassion, I gritted my teeth and secretly brewed one potent tonic after another, delivering each bowl personally to my betrothed. Chang Yuan stared at the pitch-black, steaming medicine in the bowl. His throat bobbed once. The look he gave me suddenly turned deep and unfathomable, the corner of his mouth lifting into a smile laced with danger. One straightforward female physician, fully intent on slinging my medicine chest over my shoulder and returning to the countryside the moment the chance arose. One inscrutable young general, outwardly cold and indifferent, yet inwardly already spinning an invisible net, patiently waiting for his fiancée to step right into the trap. In this glittering capital, would the letter breaking their engagement be torn up so easily? And that so-called hidden ailment, was it real, or merely bait? The medical arts passed down in my family had never come from any prestigious orthodox lineage, nor did we possess any secret ancestral manuals. What we had was practical, battle-forged medicine honed through real-world use. My great-grandfather began as a simple peddler, shouldering his rattling carrying pole and wandering through the surrounding towns and villages, slipping into every alley and corner. Whenever he entered the city to restock, the place he loved visiting most was the medicine hall. He never prescribed herbs or examined patients, he simply sat there for half a day, craning his neck to watch the great physicians seated inside take pulses, listen to symptoms, ask questions, and write prescriptions. When the shopkeeper chased him out, he would chuckle and shuffle to the door, only to return shamelessly the next time. The old man gradually taught himself a few tricks. Once, the youngest son of our reckless neighbor swallowed a copper coin and cried until his face turned purple. The whole family panicked like ants on a hot pan. My great-grandfather, however, stayed perfectly calm. He boiled chives until soft, mixed them with sesame oil, and forced the child to swallow 2 full bowls. The next morning, the coin slid out along with the chive strands. The family knelt and kowtowed in gratitude. From then on, word spread. Whenever my great-grandfather set his pole down beneath the willow tree at Liutu village, the villagers and elders would crowd around, begging for treatment. For a patient with pus leaking from their ear, he would say, dry some red dates, grind them into powder, mix with sesame oil, and apply a few times. It'll clear right up. For a child with a swollen lump on the neck, he would reply casually, don't worry, that hard knot isn't serious. Go up the mountain, catch a small snake, cook it whole with the skin and flesh together with an egg, and it will disappear. He spoke as lightly as if chatting about everyday meals, yet those simple folk remedies truly saved lives. Over time, dried chilies and jerky dangled from his peddler's pole, gifts from grateful villagers. My grandfather was a little terror as a boy. If he wasn't climbing trees to catch birds, he was wading in streams to fish. He was forever breaking arms or spraining legs. Great-grandfather, exasperated, tossed him a few tattered yellowed booklets, filled with diagrams of human figures for bone, setting and meridian points to keep him occupied. Who could have guessed the boy would actually master the skill in his spare time? He would run his hands along every bone in his own body, figuring out which connected to which and where each meridian led. In the end, he trained a pair of miraculous hands. Not only could he set his own bones, but whenever anyone in the village sprained an ankle or broke a leg, he only needed to run his fingers over them once to know exactly where the misalignment lay. With a gentle push, crack, the person would hobble home with a cane, only to be running and jumping like normal the next day. By my father's generation, he had absorbed the strengths of the previous 2 and surpassed them. The essential prescriptions of the golden coffer rolled off his tongue with perfect clarity. He could recite the treatise on cold damage from beginning to end. The golden needles in his hand were so precise that a single prick brought immediate results. Even rarer, he married the most renowned master physician in gynecology within 10 miles and 8 villages. My maternal family had been midwives for 3 generations. Mother had followed her elders since she was small. At 5 or 6 she already knew how to carry hot water and wring towels for birthing women. By her teenage years she could assist with deliveries on her own. Before she even came of age, her reputation had spread far and wide. Whether facing a difficult labor or a breech birth, she remained calm and resourceful. Those hands seemed to possess a spiritual intuition. Every time, she turned danger into safety and ensured both mother and child survived. My father and mother complemented each other perfectly. One treated external injuries and common illnesses, while the other specialized in gynecology and childbirth. Across 10 miles and 8 villages, whenever their names were mentioned, everyone would sigh in admiration. That husband and wife pair is truly a match made in heaven. Bodhisattvas sent down to relieve suffering and save lives. From a young age, father raised me in a free, spirited way. Whenever my parents went out to practice medicine, they would casually leave me with the neighbors. Thanks to the good karma my parents had accumulated through healing, all the aunts and uncles in the village loved me like their own. One house would slip me a candy, another would add a poached egg to my bowl. Though small, I grew up amid the kitchen fires and hearthsides of other people's homes, listening to their family gossip while watching them pickle vegetables and sew thick soles. A perfectly natural childhood. When I grew a little older, I followed father as his medicine boy. When he went up the mountain to gather herbs, he made me carry a smosket packed with medicine bottles, a sickle, and ropes. The weight pressed on my shoulders until I panted. Yet father would only smile with narrowed eyes, crook his finger, and say, "Horror, come here, let father give you a bowl of this green juice to taste. It's sweet." Naively believing him, I took a big gulp. The bitterness shot straight from my tongue to my brain. So bitter my mouth went numb and tears streamed down my face. That night I had diarrhea until my legs gave out from squatting in the outhouse. The next morning, father cheerfully added a line to his medical notes. Child accidentally swallowed poison. Though bitter, it effectively expels toxins. Mother was so furious she chased him around the streets with a broom. He had used his own daughter to test random medicines. I even broke his leg over it once. From then on, father no longer dared take me up the mountain. He only brought me to the clinic. I was quite talkative and could chat with anyone. Even patients coming for treatment would find me sidling up to ask where it hurt and how badly. Seeing how capable I was, father dumped a pile of mixed medicinal ingredients on me and ordered me to sort them one by one. In less than half an hour I had finished cleanly and even pointed out that the medicine boy had mistaken Baiwei for Baiqian and Fangji for Mutong. Father was stunned. Where is amazing. Father will give you a nice toy for this. He tossed me a different acupuncture dummy covered in acupoints and a bag of silver needles. From then on, he began teaching me to locate the points. Later, I could find every one even with my eyes closed. Sometimes, when father examined fussy children who refused to cooperate, he would deliberately put on a stern face. "Stop crying, or that big sister over there will prick you with her needle." The moment I heard that, I would jump up, eyes sparkling. Can I really prick them? Seeing the silver needle in my hand, the child would fall silent and obediently stretch out an arm for father to take the pulse. It was a pity I never got the chance to prick a real person. When I grew a little older, I set up a small desk beside father's examination table to write medical records for him. He took pulses and diagnosed. I diligently noted everything down. He wrote prescriptions. I copied them neatly. As the years passed, I had seen no fewer than 80 or 100 difficult and miscellaneous cases. Every strange illness in the world had been recorded in 3 thick notebooks. Just as I was happily waiting for the day I would complete my apprenticeship, father suddenly turned to arranging my marriage. That winter, in the middle of a snowy night, he rescued a blood-soaked nobleman from the mountains. It was the old Marquis of the Wei Marquis Manor. On imperial orders, he had been secretly investigating corruption in the grain transport when the Q family ambushed him with poisoned arrows. His attendants were either dead or gravely wounded. None remained unscathed. Clinging to his last breath, he had slipped deep into the mountains and was coincidentally discovered by my father while gathering herbs. Right there in the mountain cave, father extracted the poisoned arrow, applied herbal poultices to stop the bleeding, and labored to pull the man back from the gates of death. During his recovery, the old Marquis drank the old hen soup my mother stewed for him every day. Seeing me practicing acupuncture at his side, he liked me more and more the longer he looked. When it came time to part, he gripped my father's hand tightly and arranged the marriage between our families before anyone could object. On the surface he called it forming a bond of friendship and vowed never to forget the kindness. He left behind the jade pendant he always carried as a token. Once the engagement was set, my parents forbade me from burying myself in medicine any longer. They hired famous teachers to instruct me in reading, etiquette, flower arranging, and womanly skills. Mother said that marrying into a powerful family like the Marquis' manor meant she did not expect me to rely on medicine for security, but under no circumstances could I embarrass myself or lose face for my in-laws. It sounded simple, yet doing it proved another story entirely. Embroidery needles and silver needles were both needles, yet their use was worlds apart. Silver needles required steadiness, precision, lightness, and skill. One prick had to hit the exact point. Embroidery needles had to thread up and down, the slightest distraction would pierce your fingertip. There were nights I stayed up until my eyes were as dark as a panda's, only to embroider something that looked neither like a duck nor a mandarin duck. Nanny Lee flew into a rage and smacked my hand with her ruler. I grumbled in annoyance, "Old Marquis, oh old Marquis, are you repaying kindness or taking revenge?" The most disheartening thing was the Wei family's attitude. Over the years of our betrothal, they only sent silver during festivals, always generous amounts. Beyond that, not a single extra word. No visits, no mention of the wedding date. My family was left stuck in the middle, unable to advance or retreat. Accepting the silver risked outsiders mocking us for chasing wealth. Refusing it might offend the Marquis' manor's dignity and make us seem ungrateful. Though our family was not from a prestigious clan, we were honest and upright. Generations of physicians who had accumulated virtue. We hardly deserved such neglect. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Taking advantage of my parents being away treating patients, I left a letter, slung my medicine bag over my shoulder, hired a donkey cart, and jolted my way to the capital. I intended to go to the Wei family and break the engagement. The moment I reached the Marquis' manor gate, before my feet could even steady, chaos erupted inside as if the sky were collapsing. Maids and servants ran back and forth, every face pale with terror. From the gatehouse came sounds of crying, scolding, and frantic shouts. "Hurry and summon the physician." I peeked inside and saw people rushing in and out of the main chamber in total disorder. The old madam had suffered a relapse. She lay curled on the Chang, coughing until she spat blood, her handkerchief soaked crimson. Under the eaves, Chang Yuan stood deathly pale, hoarsely urging the servants to fetch the doctor. The gatekeeper servant spotted me, carrying my medicine chest, and immediately assumed I was the summoned physician. Without letting me speak, he dragged me straight inside. "Quick, quick, the doctor has arrived." Everything happened too fast. Before I could explain, I was pushed into the old madam's chamber. The person on the Chang had a gray, ashen face. Her breathing was so faint it seemed to hang by a thread. I stepped forward, lifted her eyelids for a glance, then swiftly took her pulse. The pulse was thready and faint, nearly extinguished. This was phlegm blocking the heart orifice. There was no time for medicine, only immediate acupuncture would suffice. But I had never needled a real patient before. At most I had practiced on rabbits and my father, along with years of being tricked and coaxed by him. When Chang Yuan saw me holding the silver needles, he shot forward like lightning and seized my wrist, his grip so strong it felt as if he would crush the bones. "What do you think you're doing?" The pain in my wrist snapped me back to reality. I looked down at the old madam. Her face had already turned purplish, her lips darkening. In this world, everything has a first time. I could not stand by and watch someone die without trying to save them. With resolve in my heart, any further hesitation would be fatal. I flung his hand away, and almost in the same breath, the silver needle descended. I targeted the Baiyue and Yintang points to clear her mind and calm her spirit, then needled Danzhong and Naguan to soothe the chest and regulate the qi. My fingertips gently twirled the needle shaft, silently sensing the faint vibrations beneath the tip. The sensation was so familiar it felt as if I were still sitting beside father's examination table practicing, under his watchful eye. Chang Yuan's eyes reddened with fury. He tried to lunge forward and pull me away, but the desperate servants held him back with their lives. At that exact moment, a gurgling sound rose from the old madam's throat. She coughed up a thick wad of phlegm. Her breathing immediately cleared. Slowly, she opened her eyes and gazed around in a daze. Only then did Dr. Liu, whom they had summoned, come rushing in, panting, medicine chest in hand. The moment he stepped through the door, and saw the old madam lying on the Chang, with several needles still inserted, and the silver needles in my hand, he exclaimed in astonishment, "This young lady's acupuncture technique is truly remarkable." Chang Yuan grew suspicious and looked me up and down. "Which medicine hall are you a physician from?" I stood up. Though my heart pounded like a drum, my face remained calm. "Shilipu, the Kui family's Danhua. I was once betrothed to the young Marquis." The old madam and Chang Yuan snapped awake as if from a dream. They hastily ordered servants to serve tea and offer seats. The old madam propped herself halfway up on the Chang, took my hand, studied my features closely, and inquired about my parents' health, before asking about recent family matters. Her gaze held both scrutiny and a trace of warmth. I answered each question truthfully, then clearly stated my purpose in coming today to break the engagement. Upon hearing this, the old madam's eyes reddened. She gripped my hand even tighter. "Good child, it is our Wei family that has wronged you. In recent years the manor has suffered one misfortune after another." The old Marquis passed away too suddenly. Chang Yuan cut her off coldly. "Mother." At that time I only learned that the old Marquis had lost his life far away on the battlefield in the Uea Valley skirmish. At the time, His Majesty harbored suspicions and military provisions were never delivered. The old Marquis led fewer than 1,000 troops to hold the camp, surrounded by the barbarian army. In the end he was struck by 17 arrows and died. The entire Wei manor was plunged into mourning, so no one had the heart to attend to the marriage. I once resented the old Marquis for being careless and casually arranging this engagement. But hearing the old stories now, thinking of how he exhausted himself investigating the grain transport corruption, and sacrificed himself on the battlefield to defend the border, my heart fills with countless emotions. Chang Yuan looked at me, his voice turning solemn. "Earlier there were many offenses against Miss Qi. I hope you can forgive us." He paused then continued. "The Wei family has neglected you these past few years, causing Miss Qi much grievance. However, my mother has been bedridden for a long time, and everyone in the capital already knows. If we break the engagement with you now, I'm afraid outsiders will say Miss Qi saw my mother's grave illness and chose to abandon us, damaging your reputation." He spoke with sincerity. "Could I ask Miss Kai to temporarily stay in the manor as my nominal fiancée and trouble yourself with regulating and treating my mother's condition? Once her health improves, I will definitely find a perfect excuse to break the engagement, ensuring you suffer no embarrassment." I was so frightened I waved my hands hastily. "My medical skills are not refined enough, please don't let me ruin the old madam's condition." The acupuncture just now was already a desperate gamble. If the old madam lets me treat her and the illness does not improve, or worse, worsens, I would have 100 mouths and still could not explain myself. The old madam still held my handly, her eyes resolute. "Girl, I'm not afraid, just treat me. I've drunk countless bowls of medicine and tried every unorthodox method without improvement. Consider it treating a dead horse as if it were alive." She sighed openly. "Even my coffin is already prepared, sitting right there in the western chamber." At that point, she grew too emotional and began coughing violently again. If it weren't for the fact that Chang Wan's and Chang Lin's major life matters are still unresolved, I would have followed the old Marquis long ago. I had encountered many patients, those who always claimed, life and death mean nothing, were actually the most afraid of dying. It was rare to find someone willingly placing themselves at my doorstep for practice. I bit my lip and, in the end, nodded in agreement. I wrote a letter to my parents, saying only that the capital was prosperous and I wished to stay a few more days to enjoy the sights before returning. After that, I moved into Lanyu Pavilion and took over the old madam's entire regimen of meals and medication. Every morning I checked her pulse, recorded how many times she woke coughing at night, carefully observed the color and thickness of her phlegm, and adjusted the prescription accordingly. Before long I noticed that Dr. Liu came to take her pulse every day in a rush, leaving just as hastily, his face full of impatience. When feeling her pulse, his mind seemed elsewhere. He would not even finish listening to the old madam before hastily writing a prescription. I casually asked him more questions about what medicines she had used before, and he immediately darkened his face. "Miss Qi, are you questioning this old man? Though your acupuncture is good, your experience is still lacking." My ancestors were imperial physicians with a fine reputation in the Imperial Medical Institute. The old madam looked up and gave him a cold glance. You're impressive, your ancestors are impressive, but I don't see any improvement from your treatment. On the contrary, since Hur gave me a few needles, the number of times I've woken coughing at night has decreased dramatically. She waved her hand. From tomorrow onward, there is no need for you to come anymore. The attending servant panicked. That won't do, madam. Entrusting your life to a little country girl. If word gets out, won't people laugh at our Marquis' manor for having no one capable? The old madam slammed her hand down on the Chang table. Concubine Anne, you are speaking far too much. Concubine Anne was the old Marquis's secondary wife. Having lived in the manor many years and borne him a son, Chang Lin, she remained after the old Marquis's death and had taken charge of household affairs. Now that the old madam was ill, nearly all major and minor matters in the manor had fallen into her hands. The day I first stepped foot here, she had not hidden her contempt. She looked my coarse cloth clothing up and down, her eyes filled with disgust. Hearing that my mother was a countryside healer, she covered her mouth with a handkerchief and sneered. In my opinion, with your status, Miss Kui, you should not dream of clinging to the Marquis' manor. The engagement arranged years ago was nothing but the old Marquis speaking casually in jest. It cannot be taken seriously. Now that you are forcing the issue, it is inevitable that outsiders will curse you for being ungrateful and repaying kindness with enmity. I shot her a glance. You certainly know how to manage things. Perhaps because she had never been retorted to like this, she trembled with rage, the powder on her face seeming ready to flake off. I stared straight at her face a moment longer, making her increasingly uncomfortable. Miss Kui truly has no manners, staring at someone like that. What for? I burst out laughing. The thick layer of powder on Concubine Anne's face could not hide the dark circles under her eyes from excessive worry and sleepless nights. If I am not mistaken from your complexion, your monthly courses have probably been irregular for over half a year now, haven't they? Concubine Anne's face flushed crimson. It took her a long while to squeeze out a reply. You shameless thing. A young lady who hasn't even come of age, opening her mouth to speak of such matters. Does Concubine Anne wish to know if there is a way to alleviate it? She actually leaned in slightly. I moved close to her ear and said with a half smile, mind your own business less, and your internal fire will naturally subside. Keep your mouth shut tightly, and your liver Q will harmonize on its own. Only then did she realize I was mocking her for meddling. Her expression shifted through several colors, her chest heaving violently. After suppressing her anger, she forced a smile. You have quite the sharp tongue, Miss Kui. Instead of making things difficult for me here, why don't you think about your own future? She leaned closer and lowered her voice. There is something you might not know yet. Our young Marquis was severely injured years ago on the battlefield while risking his life to protect the old Marquis. His foundation was damaged, and I'm afraid he may never be able to perform his marital duties again. She gave me a smug glance. What a pity for such fine looks, you will end up wasting away alone in an empty chamber. A chill wind slapped my face, sending a shiver down my spine. So that was it. No wonder the Wei family had avoided the marriage matter all these years. They were not deliberately looking down on me, they were simply caught between a rock and a hard place. If Chang Yuan initiated the breakup, he would be accused of ingratitude. But if he truly married me, he would fear ruining my entire life. Thinking of this, all the previous knots in my heart suddenly unraveled, and Concubine Anne's calculations became crystal clear. Knowing all this, when I saw Chang Yuan again, my heart could not help but soften a little. That night, after helping the old madam drink her sedative and performing moxibustion, I waited until her breathing evened out before quietly withdrawing. It was deep into the night, and snow had begun to fall. A thin layer of white covered the manor courtyard. Near the side gate, a shadowy figure carrying a medicine chest was whispering with the gatekeeper. I immediately became alert. Could Concubine Anne be up to some trick again? Reminding myself, I resolved to pay even closer attention to the old madam's condition. Lost in thought, I kept my head down as I walked, only snapping back to reality when I collided hard with a solid chest. Chang Yuan stood beneath the red plum tree in the courtyard, still as a wall. Snow dusted his shoulders, and exhaustion shadowed his face. I rubbed my forehead. Forgive me, young Marquis. I bumped into you. It's fine, he said, his voice low and warm. Miss Q has worked hard. Many thanks for your wholehearted care toward my mother. It is only a physician's duty. Young Marquis need not worry too much. Perhaps because of the falling snow, the red plums, or the unusually quiet night, he fell silent for a moment before suddenly opening up. This red plum tree was personally planted by my father before he went off to war. He had told my mother that the red plum blossoms bloomed. That would be the time he returned victorious. But the flowers withered and bloomed again, and father never came back, he continued. That year, His Majesty was deliberately using the situation to test the influence of the Wei Marquis Manor and General Dinyuan. Fortunately, the Wei family has always remained loyal through the generations and never crossed any lines. When the barbarian army invaded, my father and I both donned armor and marched to war together. It's just a pity that His Majesty had always harbored doubts. Sometimes military provisions were short on food, other times weapons and equipment were lacking. The old Marquis had no choice but to exhaust the family's savings accumulated over many years, scraping together supplies like an ant carrying food to the battlefield. That night, the barbarian forces launched a surprise attack from the east while striking the main army from the west. They lured me 30 miles away from the camp, leaving my father with fewer than 1,000 troops to defend it. By the time I realized it was a trap and desperately rushed back to provide reinforcements, it was already too late. When I finally fought my way back, the entire camp had turned into a sea of flames. Father had been struck by 17 arrows and lay collapsed in a pool of blood. His voice grew hoarse as his gaze quietly sank into the deep darkness of the night. What pained me most wasn't the sight of his body wrapped in horsehide for burial, but the fact that those sacrifices could have been avoided. If we had had enough troops, if reinforcements had arrived in time, if provisions hadn't run short, in that moment I hated the heavens for being unjust, hated fate for toying with us, and hated myself even more for being powerless to turn the tide. You did your best, I said softly. The dead are gone. The living must live well for their sake. I had originally wanted to advise him not to dwell too much on the past and to take better care of his health, then find a way to treat that hidden condition of his as soon as possible. Only when he was healthy could this precarious Marquis Manor have a true pillar to lean on. But when the words reached my lips, I didn't know how to phrase them properly. In the end, I could only say vaguely, "Young Marquis, you mustn't worry yourself excessively. You have to take care of your health above all else. If you feel unwell anywhere, you must seek treatment promptly." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. This was hardly subtle. It was practically pointing out his inability to perform his marital duties right to his face. My face burned. I could only sneak glances at his expression, terrified that he might take advantage of the opening and actually ask me to treat him. How on earth was I so as to respond? I did know a little about that kind of condition, but I was still an untouched maiden. How thorough did an examination need to be before it could be considered proper treatment? The more I thought about it, the more flustered I became. "Miss Key, are you actually concerned about me?" A trace of probing entered his voice, and his burning gaze locked onto me. Snow seemed to linger between his brows and at the corners of his eyes, yet it lent him an indescribable gentleness. Before I could figure out how to reply, a young maid came running over in a panic. "Young Marquis, it's terrible. The eldest young miss is having another nightmare." We hurried over and found Wei Chang Ning with her hair disheveled, wearing only her inner robes. She stood in the middle of the room, gripping a sharp golden needle tightly in her hand and slashing it repeatedly across her wrist. Blood already streaked her skin in several crimson lines, a sight that made one's heart tremble in fear. "Quickly, restrain her," Chang Yuan ordered the servants. Everyone immediately rushed forward to pin Chang Ning down, but she seemed trapped in a nightmare, her mind and actions no longer under her own control. The more people crowded around her, the more violently she struggled. In the blink of an eye, she pressed the golden needle against her own throat. "Everyone, step back." I pushed the crowd aside and strode quickly toward her. She glared at me with hazy yet wary eyes, her grip on the needle tightening even more. I drew a silver needle from my sleeve, aimed carefully, and stabbed it straight into the hegu point on the back of her hand. Her fingers gradually went numb, and the golden needle clattered to the floor. I immediately followed up by kneeling the Naguan point to calm her spirit, causing her body to go limp. The final needle went into the Bioi point at the top of her head. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she staggered forward, collapsing into my arms. I helped her lie down on the kang, carefully bandaged her wrist, then took her pulse. Her pulse was taut and thin like an overstretched string. Clear signs of long-term depression and chaotic liver qi. Young Marquis, what exactly has the eldest young miss been through? Chang Yuan clasped his hands behind his back, his expression grave. Chang Ning was originally betrothed to the Liu family. Liu Wenjing is the son of the Vice Minister of Revenue. The two families were well matched, and it should have been a perfect union. Who could have known that before the old Marquis's mourning period was even over, the Wei family received a letter from Liu Wenjing breaking the engagement? As for the reason, the Liu family refused to say a single word. When outsiders asked, Liu Wenjing only gave the vague excuse that their fates were not aligned. That meaningful silence only fueled the rumors spreading through the capital. Everyone said Chang Ning had lost her virtue. Some even suspected she had ruined her own reputation. Yet no one bothered to investigate the truth. What people love most in this world is adding fuel to the fire of gossip. It turned out that during that time, Liu Wenjing's childhood sweetheart cousin had already taken her place. She was walking around the Liu manor with a pregnant belly, acting every bit like the proper wife. Chang Ning was driven to the brink by Liu Wenjing's betrayal. She stopped playing the zither, stopped painting, and simply sat silently by the window day after day, watching the red plum blossoms in the courtyard bloom and wither. The last spark of spirit in the young girl gradually faded, just like a flower slowly wilting. Chang Yuan's voice was hoarse with exhaustion and helplessness. I truly had no solution when it came to my younger sister. Every physician I invited was eventually driven away by her. When she had her good days, she acted as if nothing was wrong. But most of the time she remained apathetic, finding no interest in anything. Come winter, seeing the falling leaves only deepened her sorrow, until she gradually developed these extreme self-harming tendencies. I was afraid she would harm herself in secret, so I ordered the servants to remove every rope, every sharp object from her room. Even a single needle was not allowed to remain. But the more we did this, the more she felt that everyone was looking at her with strange, suspicious eyes. I let out a soft sigh. Does the eldest young miss truly love Liu Wenjing that much? Chang Yuan shook his head. Not exactly. The marriage was arranged by our parents. Chang Ning has always been dutiful. In the 3 years since they were betrothed, she met Liu Wenjing no more than 3 times and barely exchanged a few words with him. The reason she couldn't endure it was because Liu Wenjing had thrown dirty water on her. She couldn't stand being slandered and cursed by others. I immediately understood. Someone like Chang Ning had probably been raised since childhood to be perfect in every way. As the eldest legitimate daughter of the Marquis' manor, she had been carefully cultivated. Intelligent, studious, skilled in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She could compose poetry effortlessly. In the eyes of outsiders, she was a perfect young lady of both talent and beauty. Back then, suitors had nearly trampled the threshold of their door. Her father had carefully chosen before finalizing the match. Chang Yuan smiled bitterly. Those who once sang her praises have now become the sharpest blades, cursing her the loudest. I looked at him and said slowly, Young Marquis, you must understand one truth: the more perfect something is in this world, the less it can withstand impact. It's like a precious peony grown inside a glass house. One cold snap can kill it. On the other hand, the wild grass by the roadside can be trampled flat yet still grow back stronger. I told him a story from my village. In my village, there was also a girl who was jilted. For the first 3 days she cried until she nearly died, refusing to eat or drink. By the 4th day, she had already shouldered a carrying pole and gone out to work. Her father was bedridden, and her younger siblings were waiting hungrily for food. She simply didn't have time to wallow in sentimental sorrow. I pointed at myself. The same goes for me. Before coming to the capital, I came specifically to break off the engagement with you. I have never believed that a single betrothal document could destroy me. Whether I live well or not does not depend on what others say. Upon hearing this, Chang Yuan burst into laughter. Miss Qi, with your character, even if the engagement is broken, suitors will line up from here to the city gates. Of course. I replied calmly, not bothering to feign modesty. The smile on his face suddenly faded, and his gaze deepened. Have you ever considered what would happen if the Wei family refuses to break the engagement? I answered steadily. My parents raised me properly and taught me etiquette. If you refuse to break it off, I will marry into the Marquis' manor and fulfill my duties as the proper wife. managing the household, entertaining guests, and handling social relations. I am more than capable of all that. He stared at me intently, as if growing more interested. So Miss Q had already prepared a perfect escape route for herself long ago. There is no escape route. I laughed. Every choice in life is simply fate forcing us forward. My original wish was to become a proper physician who could save the dying and heal the wounded. After the old Marquis arranged our engagement, my parents forced me to abandon medicine and learn etiquette and womanly arts instead. At the time, I resented them deeply. I felt as if my once perfect path had been turned upside down. But the skills I learned have taken root inside me. Coming to the capital, curing the old madam, and proving my medical abilities in a different way. I am very proud of that. We can never predict what the future holds. The only thing we can do is strengthen our hearts so we can face any change with unwavering resolve. Only after saying this did I suddenly realize something was off. Wait, why don't you want to break the engagement anymore? A true man should keep his word. Under the flickering candlelight, I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. The words seemed to get stuck in his throat. It's not that it's impossible to break it. At the very least, you should treat Chang Ning first. Once she recovers, we can discuss the engagement again. It won't be too late. Standing before a patient, I have always possessed an unyielding competitive spirit. Fine. One word is enough. The needles I used on Chang Ning will only last 2 shichen at most. Sure enough, she woke from her nightmare in the middle of the night, shooting upright in bed drenched in sweat as if she had just been pulled from water. The moment she saw me sitting vigil beside her, confusion filled her eyes. You can consider me your future sister-in-law for now, I said, rubbing my sleepy eyes. But at this moment, you are my patient. Hearing this, she frowned. I am not sick, she glared at me. You must have heard those ridiculous rumors outside and, like everyone else, think I've gone mad. You came here to watch the spectacle, didn't you? It was still dark outside. I had been wearing my outer robes while lying at the edge of her bed for half the night, and my limbs were freezing. Without saying a word, I climbed onto the bed, snatched half of her blanket, and pulled it over myself. She looked at me with a mix of disgust and wariness. What are you doing? Eldest young miss, I'm about to freeze to death. I tucked my ice-cold feet under the blanket. I just saved your life, and you haven't thanked me with a single word. Instead, you speak coldly and mock me. How heartless. I scooted closer to her. The floor heating in this Grand Marquis manor of yours isn't even as warm as the Chang in my house. Chang Ning stiffened, her entire body going rigid, but in the end she didn't kick me off the bed. I tilted my head and looked at her. Do you know why you're in so much pain? Because you're paying the price for someone else's mistake. Lu Wen Zheng breaking the engagement was due to his own blindness. What does that have to do with you? The moment the 2 words, broken engagement, were spoken so bluntly in front of her, her breathing hitched. She gripped my arm tightly. Chang Ning was the type of person who had suffered a severe blow to her heart and mind. To cure her, medicine alone wasn't enough. More important was helping her live like a normal person again. Chang Ning, you've read so many books and learned so much about principles. You should understand one truth. No one can save you except yourself. I looked at her with complete seriousness. I beg you to save yourself again and again from this pit of fire and boiling water. She remained silent, her eyes still hazy. I quietly observed her, unsure whether this kind of stimulation would work. If she had another episode later, I could always needle her again. Seeing that she had sunk into thought, I took her hand and continued gently, the red plum tree in the courtyard is blooming again. I heard from your brother that the old Marquis planted it himself before he went to war. Would you like to go out with me tomorrow to admire the flowers? She whispered. I look at it every day. Looking at it from the window and standing beneath the tree are different things. I stroked her fingers. Looking from the window is merely watching from afar. Standing beneath the tree means immersing yourself in the blossoms. You can smell their fragrance and catch the falling petals in your hands. A long time passed. Just as I was about to doze off, I finally heard her soft reply. Chang Yan was worried I couldn't handle it alone, so he deliberately invited an imperial physician from the Imperial Medical Institute to come and exchange insights with me. Imperial physician Wang was very different from Dr. Liu. He patiently answered every question I had, and even lent me books from the Institute's collection. He said that the old madam's condition had improved so much largely thanks to my efforts. Those words sounded particularly satisfying. After all, it was indeed my achievement. After several days of continuous snowfall, the snow finally stopped. I set up a long lounge chair in the courtyard, laid a thick soft cushion on it, and resolutely dragged Chang Ning outside. We lay together on the chair, basking in the sun while admiring the plum blossoms. To restore someone's vitality, you first have to nurture them like a plant. Sunlight, food, rest, fresh air. None of it could be missing. The courtyard sunlight felt warm and lazy on the body. I narrowed my eyes contentedly and said, "Chang Ning, teach me how to brew tea. I heard your tea making skills are excellent." After a moment of hesitation, Chang Ning stood up. She personally brought out the tea tray, her slender fingers gracefully handling the leaves and pouring the water. Her movements flowed like clouds in water, naturally elegant and refined. Every small gesture revealed the upbringing of a Marquis' manor's eldest daughter. I accepted the teacup, drained it in one gulp, then turned and brought out a bowl of pitch, black medicine. One good turn deserves another. I tasted your tea, now you must drink my specially brewed tonic. Knowing she had been teased, she angrily scooped up a handful of snow and smashed it at me. I immediately rolled an even bigger snowball and hurled it back, hitting her squarely on the back. "How dare you hit me?" Chang Ning jumped up. A faint blush finally appeared on her previously pale cheeks, and her eyes sparkled with life. The two of us chased and pelted each other with snowballs beneath the plum tree. She ran until she was panting, her hair in disarray. When the maids saw her moving too vigorously, they hurried over with a hand warmer, wanting to put it in her hands. I raised my hand to stop them. "It's fine. Letting the eldest young miss absorb more of the heaven and earth's vitality is far more effective than any miracle medicine." Before I finished speaking, she had already rolled another snowball and thrown it at me. I dodged nimbly. With a soft thump, the snowball smashed right into Chang Yuan, who had just entered the courtyard, exploding against his neck. The freezing snow fragments slipped down his collar, making him suck in a sharp breath. "Oh no." I secretly cursed and rushed over, standing on tiptoes to brush the snow off him. He instinctively bent down to make it easier for me. My fingers brushed across his warm throat, sending a slightly tingling sensation through them. Startled by my cold fingers, he shivered and quickly caught my hand, as if afraid I would reach deeper into his collar. The dense warmth from his palm instantly spread through my entire body like an electric current. I suddenly realized how intimate this action was, and hurriedly pulled my hand back. My cheeks flushed with a cloud of pink, and even my ears grew hot. Fortunately, Chang Yuan's attention was entirely on Chang Ning. Seeing his sister smiling so happily for the first time in a long while, he turned to me with softened eyes. "Danhua, you're truly remarkable." Hearing him call me directly by my given name, I understood. He truly cared deeply for this younger sister of his. Now that he saw Chang Ning improving so much, his joy was genuine. Chang Ning only played for a short while before growing tired. Complaining that her eyes hurt, she slowly returned to her room to rest. Seeing her leave so indifferently, Chang Yuan stood by the window with a somewhat dejected expression. I brought out a bowl of medicine from the small kitchen and held it out to him. "Young Marquis, the weather is freezing. I brewed some tonic soup. I already gave some to the old madam and Chang Ning. This extra portion is specially for you. Please drink it." On the surface I remained calm, but inside I felt a twinge of guilt. This was no ordinary tonic. It was the special prescription I had carefully adjusted for his unspeakable condition. Even without taking his pulse directly, I had quietly added ingredients like epimedium, astragalus, deer antler, and several other strong tonics. I secretly calculated that this dose should have some effect on that area. If even this much proved useless, then his injury was likely far more serious than I had imagined. Chang Yuan stared at the bowl for a long time, seemingly searching for a way to refuse without embarrassing me. After much hesitation, he finally accepted it and drank the entire bowl in one go. "Thank you for always thinking of me. However, my body has always been strong. In the future, you needn't trouble yourself over me anymore." After drinking, he set the bowl down. His throat bobbed, and an indescribable look flashed across his face. He was clearly putting on a brave front. The plant-like nurturing method proved extremely effective for Chang Ning. At first she only walked around the small courtyard. Later she began venturing out to stroll through the entire Marquis' manor. Sometimes she would even stop in front of flower beds, bending down to play with the leaves. Day by day, vitality returned to her expression. I took the opportunity to guide her step by step. First, she had to treat herself like a living creature, going outside, admiring scenery, and interacting with others. Only after accomplishing that could she gradually become a real person again. And once a person comes back to life, desires will naturally arise. She would want to dress beautifully, show herself to the world, socialize, and be seen by others. None of these could be missing. Only when she dared to face her own desires honestly would this illness truly be cured. The day I took Chang out to the streets, she was still a little timid, constantly tugging lightly at my stived. The moment our carriage stopped, every eye in the capital turned toward her. Some gazes were curious, some scrutinizing, and some deliberately malicious. Standing in front of a jewelry shop, a young lady in a red dress recognized Chang immediately. Her eyes were full of contempt, and her words were even less polite. "Isn't this the Wei family's eldest young miss, who was jilted?" Looking at her now, she really is a completely different person from before. She must have suffered quite a bit, hasn't she? So those rumors were all true. She must have done something improper for the Lu family to abandon her so decisively. Chang gently gripped my sleeve and whispered, "This is the eldest daughter of the Zhao family from the Ministry of Justice's household. She has always held a grudge against me because I once stole her spotlight at a spring banquet." I nodded lightly. Chang immediately straightened her posture and looked at Miss Zhao with cold eyes. "What does it have to do with you?" Miss Zhao clearly hadn't expected such a blunt retort. She was momentarily choked before stubbornly continuing. "I heard young Master Lu would rather marry that nameless, good-for-nothing cousin of his than take you as his wife." Chang smiled faintly. "What does it have to do with you?" Those two short sentences left Miss Zhao completely speechless. She pointed at her, stammered for a long time without managing a single coherent sentence, and finally flushed red with anger, flung her sleeve and stormed off. "How refreshing." Chang eyes sparkled as she grabbed my arm. "The 2 sentences you taught me are truly invincible. From now on, whenever someone says something unpleasant, I'll just use these 2 lines to shut them up." I lifted my chin slightly, unable to hide my pride. Of course. After that, we strolled throughout the capital, from theaters and tea houses to restaurants, fabric shops, jewelry stores, rouge and powder shops, and silk houses. With every place we visited, Chang expression grew brighter. Later, she began choosing rouge, hair ornaments, and silk sashes herself. She even enthusiastically pulled me into discussions about which fabrics would look best when made into clothing. Sometime after that, when I went to check the old madam's pulse again, I found Chang obediently attending to her. Her movements were gentle, her expression peaceful, and the corners of her lips carried a faint smile. The moment the old madam saw me enter, she joyfully waved me over. "Where, you truly are a living Hua Tuo. Not only did you pull this old woman back from the gates of death, you even cured Chang so well that she's now running around full of energy." She took my hand, her eyes full of affection. "I really don't know how to thank you properly. In my opinion, the engagement between you and Chang Wen should remain as it is. Don't break it off. I only want a daughter-in-law like you." I was so frightened I waved my hands frantically. "Old madam, please stop teasing me." As we were speaking, Chang Yuan happened to walk in from outside. His face was dark and a chilling aura emanated from him. One look and it was obvious he had returned nursing a belly full of anger. In recent days the court had been far from peaceful. I had heard rumors here and there. Because of Lu Wenjung breaking the engagement with Chang Yuan had held a grudge. During morning court, he had submitted a memorial attacking the man. Who could have known that after court was dismissed, Lu Wenjung would deliberately use vicious words, mocking Chang as an old maid no one wanted to marry. Chang Yuan flew into a towering rage. He snatched the guard's saber and slashed a vicious cut across the man's arm in one stroke. Though the wound itself wasn't life-threatening, daring to draw a weapon inside the imperial palace was still a grave offense of disrespect. As a result, His Majesty punished him by confining him to his home for self-reflection for several days. Today, the moment his confinement was lifted and he returned to court, he still carried a belly full of pent-up fury when he came back to the manor. I sat beside him, not even daring to breathe too loudly. It was the old madam who finally stepped in to smooth things over. "Chang Yuan, stop pulling that long face. It's rare for me to feel this happy today. Add a few extra dishes tonight." Everyone come to my courtyard for a lively family meal. Chang Yuan answered respectfully. Everything will be arranged as mother wishes. Your son will instruct the kitchen to prepare at once. In recent days, concubine An had watched helplessly as the old madam grew stronger by the day and Chang Ning gradually regained her spirit. Naturally, she couldn't sit still. While we were enjoying our meal on this side, she had already sent someone over with fruits and sweet desserts on the other. After the maid delivered the items, she refused to leave, lingering on the side instead, her eyes darting around as she observed everything. The moment I lifted my cup to toss the family, that maid seemed to have caught something important and immediately slipped away to report to concubine An. Must you really go? Chang Yuan set down his cup and frowned slightly. Perhaps because of the wine, or perhaps because my own heart was in turmoil, I detected a faint trace of reluctance in his voice. I nodded. The year-end and New Year were approaching. My parents had written urging me to return home before the festival no matter what. In truth, I really wanted to ask him when he would finally hand over the letter breaking the engagement. But seeing him silently drain cup after cup, his face full of melancholy, the words reached my lips only to be swallowed back down. In any case, the old madam's medicine still had a few doses left. I could wait until I was truly about to leave before bringing up the matter again. Who could have guessed that this single moment of hesitation would later lead to a catastrophe? Just as Chang Yuan was out investigating a case, he walked straight into an ambush. He was gravely wounded and carried back to the manor. A terrifying gash marred his chest, soaking his robes in blood. The blade had come within a hair's breadth of piercing his heart. Imperial physicians from the palace came and went in a constant stream, and the atmosphere inside the manor was stretched taut as a bowstring. I had intended to inquire about his injuries, but before I could even gather any information, news arrived from the other side. My parents had gotten entangled in a murder case while traveling to treat patients and had been arrested by the local authorities. Outside, rain poured down in torrents. I couldn't wait until morning. I hastily packed my belongings and prepared to return home immediately. Chang Yuan had just finished having his wounds bandaged. Enduring the pain, he still called me into his room. His face was deathly pale, beads of sweat dotting his forehead, yet he forced himself to sit up. In a hoarse voice he said, "Go to the Court of Judicial Review and find Lord Chang. Ask him to accompany you back to your hometown to preside over justice." He paused to catch his breath before continuing, "I'm afraid the county magistrate there will abuse his power and trample on human lives." My mind was in chaos, utterly blank. Where is the Court of Judicial Review? Who is Lord Chang? I don't know any of that. Just as I was at a loss, Chang Ning suddenly stepped forward. I'll go with her. I don't know when she had changed into neat riding clothes, her hair tied high, looking valiant and decisive. She quickly wrote a letter detailing the situation and ordered a young maid to deliver it to Lord Chang's residence at once. After that, she turned, mounted her horse, and extended a hand toward me. "Come up." I grabbed her hand. With a strong pull, she hauled me straight onto the horse's back. "Hold on tight," she said in a steady voice. "My riding skills were taught personally by father. We'll take the shortcuts and guarantee to get you home at the fastest speed." The sound of galloping hooves thundered through the curtain of rain. The cold wind slapping my face gradually brought me back to my senses. Chang Yuan had just suffered a severe injury, and now my parents were in trouble at the same time. Everything was happening too coincidentally, so perfectly timed that it sent chills down my spine. This matter was probably no accident. I feared someone had secretly set up a trap, intending to uproot us all in one fell swoop. The moment we reached the government office, I secretly bribed the jailer to gain entry into the main prison and meet with my parents. Only after seeing them did I learn the full story. For a long time, the elderly Mr. Chen in town had been suffering from a chronic leaking condition. He had invited my father to treat him. After my father used silver needles for bloodletting and combined it with medicine, Mr. Chen's condition had indeed begun to improve. Who could have known that at that exact moment Mr. Chen's gambling, addicted nephew, Chen Biao, would be overcome by greed? Seeing that his uncle was widowed with no son to carry on the family line, he feared that once Mr. Chen recovered, the family fortune would slip from his grasp. So he hatched a vicious plan. He bribed the young medicine boy and secretly altered the prescription my father had written, deliberately increasing the dosage of the most critical herb. After my father performed the acupuncture, the medicinal power circulated through Mr. Chen's weakened body along with his blood flow. Unable to withstand it, Mr. Chen vomited blood on the spot and died. Chen Biao immediately framed my father, claiming his acupuncture had been mistaken and had disregarded human life. This despicable, low-class trick. If my mother had been present, she would have seen through it instantly. But that very day, my mother had been called away to assist with a difficult delivery for a woman in labor. She had exhausted every ounce of strength to bring the child into the world, only to discover it was a stillborn. The woman's family immediately wailed and rolled on the ground in protest, insisting that my mother had been careless during the delivery. Recalling what happened that day, my mother said in a low voice, "When I was dragged out the door, I vaguely heard a maid slip up and mention that the woman I had helped deliver was actually Chen Bliao's secret lover. They must have set up a deadly trap to corner us completely." My father's face filled with pain upon hearing this. Where, on this path of practicing medicine, the most terrifying thing has never been incurable diseases, it's the treacherous, unpredictable hearts of people. At that moment, several jailers burst in frantically, urging my parents to be taken away. "Have you finished talking? If you're done, get out quickly. The magistrate wants to hold court for interrogation. It's not even dawn yet." If it weren't for wanting to extract a confession through torture, why would the county magistrate be in such a hurry to open court at this hour? I still wanted to stall for a little more time, but Chang Ning immediately signaled me with her eyes. "Quickly go back to the medicine shop and bring the medicine boy who filled the prescription at that time. Also go knock on neighbors' doors and ask if anyone heard or saw any clues. I'll ride out to the suburbs to meet Lord Zhang. His carriage is too slow." And so the two of us split up to act. Only when the sky began to glow red on the horizon did Lord Zhang finally arrive at the government office in a dignified manner to preside over justice on our behalf. Though he wore ordinary clothes, the authority radiating from him was suffocating. He casually flipped through the case file, and his very first question cut straight to the heart. "Are Mr. Chen and Chen Biao from the same household?" That single sentence caused cold sweat to pour down Chen Biao's back like a shower. He understood perfectly that this time the county magistrate could no longer cover for him. With the young medicine boy's testimony and neighbors stepping forward as witnesses, the false case was quickly clarified. Chen Biao had staged the entire thing himself, deliberately framing my parents and murdering his own uncle, leading to an unjust death. In the end, he was sentenced to be executed at the autumn assizes, awaiting his execution day. The young medicine boy was so terrified he wet his pants. But since he had only been coerced by others, he received only 20 heavy strokes of the rod. Afterward, I escorted my parents onto the carriage, and we returned to the capital together. Thinking of how Chang Yuan was still gravely wounded, my heart simply couldn't settle. Along the way, I recounted everything that had happened to my parents. Upon hearing it, my father's eyes widened in shock. Those were the old madam and the eldest young miss of the Marquis' manor. "You little brat, you actually had the guts to treat them." I answered softly, "Yes, not only did I treat them, I even cured them." My mother immediately pulled me into her arms, her voice slow but heavy. "The path of healing and saving lives isn't difficult in itself. What's difficult is that some people only want instant results. Some hide their illnesses and fear doctors, and some are afraid to hear the truth." She stroked my hair and instructed word by word, "As physicians, we must preserve our original heart even more. Not the slightest mistake is allowed." Hearing my mother mention hiding illnesses and fearing doctors, an uneasy worry for Chang Yuan rose in my heart. That day I had left in too much of a hurry. I hadn't even had time to examine his wound properly. Before, I had only wanted to break the engagement and return to my parents' side to live peacefully as a carefree young lady of the Q family. But now he had nearly died from a stab wound, and he still carried that hidden ailment. If I broke the engagement at a time like this, I feared no proper lady would dare marry him afterward. After thinking it over again and again, I decided I might as well stay by his side for the time being and protect him for a while. Besides, my father was coming along too. Perhaps he could truly cure him. The moment we returned to the Marquis' manor, I learned that Chang Yuan had indeed walked through the gates of death. It turned out Wei Changlin had long been secretly colluding with Lu Wenzheng. Even that cousin of his had been painstakingly found and delivered to his bed by Wei Changlin. Wei Changlin had plotted to make Lu Wenjing break the engagement with Chang Ning. Also, he could use the man's influence in the Ministry of Revenue to accept bribes, and even sell official positions to scholars. Chang Yuan had gathered ironclad evidence and planned to cast the net in one decisive move, but Lu Wenjing, cornered like a desperate dog, had sent assassins to ambush him on the road while he investigated the case. Every strike had been meant to take his life. As for what happened to my parents, it all traced back to concubine Anne's hatred for me. She resented that I had cured the old madam and Chang Ning, blocking the path for her and her son. So she split her forces in two, striking at both sides at once, determined to drive us to the point where we could barely protect ourselves. But no one had expected Chang Ning to step up at the critical moment. She had stood firmly in front of us, inviting Lord Zhang to preside over justice in the village and save my parents, while personally organizing all the criminal evidence Chang Yuan had collected and handing it directly to Lord Zhang. Heaven had eyes. Chang Yuan survived his great ordeal, and the full truth finally came to light for the entire world. Lu Wenjing was stripped of his position and his family fortune confiscated. He could only lead his cousin back to their old hometown in disgrace. Wei Changlin was imprisoned by the Court of Judicial Review. Every crime he had committed was enough to keep him locked in the darkest cell for life. Concubine Anne wailed and rolled on the ground in protest outside the manor gates. The old madam, rarely so decisive, immediately summoned human traffickers to drag her away. It was a pity that concubine Anne was already advanced in years. No one wanted to buy her after she was passed around several times. What became of her afterward, no one cared to ask. Chang Yuan had been delirious with fever for 2 full days and nights. When the old madam spoke of it, her eyes reddened and the fear still lingered on her face. I paid no attention to my parents chatting with the old madam. I ran straight into his sleeping quarters. The man on the bed was still unconscious, his sword-like brows slightly furrowed, his complexion frighteningly pale. Looking at him like this, my heart suddenly clenched. A young general with glorious military achievements, yet suspected by the court, envied by his own kin, and ambushed by enemies. He had nearly lost half his life and still clung stubbornly to loyalty and righteousness. A person like him truly made my heart ache with both pain and admiration. I couldn't help reaching out to gently stroke his hair, then lightly touch his pale cheek. My fingertips slid down to his wrist as I quietly took his pulse, wanting to see just how serious that so-called hidden ailment truly was. To my surprise, his pulse was steady and powerful, flowing continuously like spring water. There wasn't the slightest sign of impotence. Could my medical skills still be too shallow? So I had never encountered this kind of unspeakable illness before. Just as I was stunned, I suddenly met a pair of clear black and white eyes sparkling with laughter. Has Physician Kui figured out what illness I have yet? I jumped in fright and tried to pull my hand back, but he caught it firmly and refused to let go. Pushed to this point, I could only grit my teeth and speak the truth. I heard you suffer from a certain unspeakable hidden ailment. He gave a soft laugh, then suddenly gripped the back of my neck and pulled me down hard. In an instant the world spun. Warm lips covered mine. The kiss was urgent and scorching, carrying a faint medicinal scent that left my mind completely blank. I even forgot to breathe. Do I have an illness or not? He leaned close to my ear and murmured, his hot breath brushing my earlobe. Try it yourself and you'll know. You scoundrel. I exploded in anger and punched him in the chest. How is this being a scoundrel? He sucked in a sharp breath. You're my legitimate fiancé. I panicked and looked down. Even through the brocade robe, I could feel his heartbeat thundering and the scorching heat radiating from his chest. Chang Yuan held my hand tightly, triumph sparkling in his eyes like a successful schemer. When did I ever say I was sick? He raised an eyebrow. Yet someone kept forcing me to drink all those body-strengthening tonics. You have no idea how much suffering I endured. Thinking back, he was right. I had never asked him directly. I had only believed concubine Anne's provocative words. Only now did I realize I had been completely fooled. Everyone in the entire Marquis manor was full of schemes. I was the only fool who had fallen into the trap. I puffed out my cheeks in fury. Just as I tried to stand, he wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me close. If concubine Anne hadn't stirred things up, how would I have known my fiancé cared about me so deeply? He sat up, resting his chin on my shoulder, his voice low and almost plaintive. I know admirers of Miss Q have been lining up for a long time. Considering the pleasant days we've spent together, Would Miss Kui allow this Marquis to squeeze into the line? I didn't bother pretending to be shy anymore. The corners of my mouth curved into an unstoppable smile. Fine, then I'll let you take the first spot. After Chang Yuan fully recovered, he solemnly brought betrothal gifts before my parents and formally asked for my hand. The 3 letters and 6 rites were prepared in full, everything done according to proper custom. I have admired Miss Q for a long time. I humbly beg uncle to give me a chance. My parents had stayed in the manor a few extra days and had seen Chang Yuan's true character clearly, so they happily agreed. Grass grew and orioles sang. In the 2nd month of spring, when the colors of spring were at their richest, I began preparing my dowry. Extra, Chang Yuan's perspective. After my father died in battle far away, my mother's health declined day by day from overwhelming grief. She coughed incessantly and could not sleep peacefully at night. Concubine and secretly schemed, repeatedly hinting at sending women into my chambers, claiming it was to span the family line and continue the Marquis' manor's bloodline. His Majesty, wary of my growing military achievements, also hinted at choosing a noble daughter to bestow upon me in marriage. On the surface it was a bestowal, but in truth it was planting a spy beside me. Worse still, before my father passed, he had arranged a countryside betrothal for me. Every time anyone mentioned marriage, my head throbbed as if split by an axe. I only wished I could return to the border at once. With no other choice, I spread the rumor that I had suffered a foundational injury on the battlefield. Only then did the matter temporarily calm down, but I never expected Qiu Danhua to come looking for me herself. At that exact moment, my mother coughed up blood and fainted. She arrived carrying a medicine chest. The moment her dusty figure stepped down from the donkey cart, the gatekeeper mistook her for the summoned physician and frantically dragged her inside to treat my mother. I thought concubine Anne was playing another trick and nearly crushed her wrist. She frowned in pain but didn't make a sound. She only gave me a cold glance. If I don't needle her now, it will be too late. Before I could decide, she had already drawn her silver needles and placed them on my mother with smooth precision. Her hands were as steady as rock, without the slightest tremble, as if she had performed the motion countless times. By the time Dr. Liu came rushing over in panic, my mother had already regained consciousness. Only then did I learn her true identity. She had come to break the engagement. In that instant, my first thought was, I absolutely could not allow the engagement to be broken. If this marriage ended, who knew how many unwanted suitors would come knocking at the door next? My mother would have to go through the trouble of selecting young ladies all over again. This Kui girl had an innocent, crystal clear look about her. I coaxed her with just a few words and managed to keep her in the manor. I never truly wanted her to treat my mother. I only wanted to use her to draw concubine Anne's attention and force mother and son to reveal their hand early. The imperial physicians came every 3 days to take my mother's pulse. Every prescription Kui Danhua wrote, I secretly passed to the imperial physician for review. I had done the same thing with Dr. Liu many times before. Being on guard against others was never superfluous. I had long known Dr. Liu belonged to concubine Anne. The old man looked down on Qiu Danhe, and Qiu Danhua despised him for being half-hearted. The two of them quarreled until the sky nearly collapsed. My mother seized the chance to have Dr. Liu thrown out of the manor, saving me a great deal of trouble. Concubine Anne told Qiu Danhua about my supposed hidden ailment. I had assumed that once she heard, she would know it was hopeless and leave on her own. Who could have guessed she not only stayed, but poured her heart into caring for my mother, and even shouldered the entire precarious Marquis' manor, as if it were her rightful duty. My mother's condition gradually improved. When the imperial physician came again, I had someone tell him there was no need to return in the future. That day she walked out of my mother's room looking exhausted, dark circles faint beneath her eyes. She lowered her head and walked quickly, crashing straight into my chest without noticing. The clean herbal scent in her hair mixed with the faint fragrance of medicine and rushed into my breath. Seeing the stray lock of hair falling across her cheek, I suddenly wanted to reach out and brush it aside. She probably thought I was still grieving the past, because her eyes were filled with pity and compassion. I could only grit my teeth and continue pretending to be heartbroken. After all, I couldn't bluntly say I had been lurking outside my mother's room to monitor her. In that instant, I felt truly despicable. Sometimes acting for too long made even me sink into the role. I truly remembered that battle. The golden sand, the smoke and fire filling the sky, my father covered in blood, and the moment I knelt beside him, powerless to change anything, she reached out to brush the snow from my shoulder and said softly, "You did your best. Young Marquis, you mustn't worry excessively. You have to take care of your health above all else. If you feel unwell anywhere, you must seek treatment promptly." I secretly laughed inside. She must have believed concubine Anne's words without doubt and was discreetly reminding me not to hide my illness and fear doctors. The moment the words left her mouth, her face flushed red like a ripe apple, making me want to take a bite. In that moment, I was completely confident in declaring I was not sick at all. Ning had another episode of madness. Ever since Lu Wenjung broke the engagement, my sister seemed to have lost her mind. She became as silent as a statue that could still move. She refused to eat or drink and wouldn't speak a single word. When the time was right, I would personally kill that beast Lu Wenjung. Kui Danhua's needles made Chang Ning temporarily unconscious. She asked why Chang Ning had become like this. I told her the whole story from beginning to end. She spoke many principles, saying Chang Ning had been protected too well since childhood and couldn't withstand the blow. I didn't agree. Chang Ning was the eldest legitimate daughter of the Marquis' manor. Being pampered while growing up was only natural. What was wrong with that? Until she said, "Before coming to the capital, I came specifically to break the engagement with you. I have never believed that a single betrothal document could destroy me. Whether I live well or not does not depend on what others say." Only then did I understand how ridiculous all the excuses I had made to keep her here truly were. She feared neither gossip nor the label of a jilted woman. The only thing that moved her was the path of healing and saving lives. She even said that even if the engagement were truly broken, suitors would still line up for her. My heart stirred with unease. If that were the case, wouldn't I be pushed to the very end of the line? She took the initiative to treat Chang Ning. To me, that was something I could only dream of. The two young ladies were close in age. It was much more convenient for them to talk about women's matters than for me. A few days later, I passed by Chang Ning's courtyard and happened to see the two of them laughing and throwing snow at each other. It had been a very long time since I had seen Chang Ning so happy. She and Danhua chased each other through the white snow, nimble as two little rabbits. A snowball flew and landed in my collar, freezing cold. Danhua laughed brightly and rushed over to brush it off. Her cool fingertips brushed my throat, light yet enough to make my heart flutter and tingle. In that instant, I only wanted to pull her into my arms. Chang Ning grew tired from playing and returned to her room to rest. Danhua brought a bowl of pitch black medicine to me and said seriously, "This is a winter tonic. Mother and Chang Ning are both taking it." Looking at her solemn yet clearly lying expression, I almost laughed out loud. Tonic, exactly what is it tonifying? Yet she was still determined to cure me. I suddenly wondered if one day I truly recovered, would she stop asking to break the engagement? I couldn't bear to disappoint her, so I raised the bowl and drank it all in one gulp. The result was that I was tonified. Until I couldn't sleep day or night. Even in my dreams, her figure haunted me. I had thought that spending day and night together would at least make her develop some feelings for me. Who knew I was the only one being sentimental? When Chang Ning's and my mother's health had nearly recovered, Qi Danhua indeed opened her mouth to say she wanted to go home again. My mother took the chance to probe, why not keep the engagement and stay as my daughter-in-law? Who could have guessed she would think my mother was only joking and become so frightened she waved her hands in refusal. I was so angry my whole body went rigid, nearly kicking over the chair. But it didn't matter, she wasn't going anywhere. According to my calculations, it was time for me to get injured. I had already discovered that the one who truly embezzled military provisions on the border years ago was Wei Changlin. I couldn't understand how he could be so ruthless. At that time, both his own father and elder brother were on the battlefield. Because of that grain embezzlement, our army fought an extremely bitter battle. I had even resented His Majesty for a long time because of it. Even Lu Wenjung breaking the engagement with Chang Ning had been orchestrated by Wei Changlin behind the scenes. He feared that if the Marquis' manor and the Lu family became in-laws, their combined power would grow too strong. So he went to great lengths to push Lu Wenjung's cousin into his bed, binding the two men to the same boat. Lately, Wei Changlin and Lu Wenjung had grown increasingly arrogant. Not only did they accept bribes using their power, they openly supported the buying and selling of official positions. The foundation of the nation lies in talented officials. How could we allow them to treat positions like goods for trade? I submitted a memorial to His Majesty requesting to personally handle the case. After secretly following the trail for some time, I finally dug up some clues. His Majesty and I coordinated a play. I deliberately clashed with Lu Wenjing, enraging His Majesty into punishing me and creating the illusion that I had offended the throne. The moment I left the capital to investigate locally, they would surely seize the chance to strike. Then I would simply let myself bleed a little to earn His Majesty's pity and request an imperial decree bestowing marriage between me and Danhua. With an imperial edict, she definitely wouldn't be able to refuse, right? I had calculated everything, yet I never calculated that Lu Wenjing would turn murderous toward Danhua's parents. They had grasped Chen Biao's gambling weakness, thrown him a large sum of money, and deliberately used his hand to cause trouble, pinning all the blame on Danhua's parents. They calculated perfectly that once the case exploded, I would be dragged away and distracted. The real assassins had already lain in wait on the road back to the countryside. I only hated myself for being too arrogant and for bringing disaster upon her, dragging Danhua into this deadly storm. I pushed myself up with my arms and forced my body off the bed. I had to go help Danhua. I had to demand justice for her parents. But the moment my feet touched the ground, my head spun violently. My whole body staggered and collapsed. Waves of scorching heat surged into my mind. Sometimes I saw my father lying in a pool of blood, opening his mouth to scold me. You couldn't even protect the Marquis' manor. You are useless. Other times I saw Lu Wenjing and Wei Changlin pressing swords to my throat, their voices bone, chillingly cold. The woman you love only brings disaster to others. Only when you die will everyone be at peace and happy. Then Danhua appeared with a face twisted in hatred, coming to demand blood debt for her parents. I cured your mother. I cured your sister. Is this how you repay me? I jolted awake from the nightmare. The moment I opened my eyes, I saw my mother sitting by the bed, her expression haggard and full of worry. It had only been a dream. Where is Danhua? I asked urgently. My mother's face was filled with sorrow. There is still no news. I didn't dare close my eyes again. In my ears, only the sound of sand falling in the hourglass remained, each grain grinding against my heart, making me so anxious I could barely breathe. Thankfully, Ning had taken the shortcut in time and avoided disaster. Her people all returned safely and even brought Danhua's parents back to the capital along the way. Only then did the heavy stone crushing my chest finally fall. When Danhua rushed into my sleeping quarters the moment she returned, I thought she had come to demand an explanation. I panicked and immediately squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to be unconscious. Yet I waited, and she still didn't say a word. I only felt her fingertips gently brush my hairline, then lightly touch my cheek. I secretly cracked my eyes open and saw her face filled with such pain it looked ready to shatter, her eyes red and heartbreaking. Only then did I understand two things. First, she had never blamed me. Second, this love had never been one-sided sentimentality on my part. She stubbornly continued taking my pulse again and again, until even she became confused by the pulse reading. My heart itched unbearably, as if claws were scratching inside. To hell with it. I'd kiss her first and figure out the rest later. After all, she was my legitimate fiancé. If I didn't lay my cards on the table and tell her the truth, I really would die of holding it in. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.